good to be with you today. So we'll be addressing caregiving today. As we give care to those that stand in need, it can be overwhelming. There's a beautiful scripture in Doctrine and Covenants 81:5 that talks about lifting up the hands that hang low and strengthening the feeble knees. Oftentimes we think about those that are sick when we're lifting hands and strengthening knees. But there is, without question, a correlation to the caregiver. The caregiver that role can be overwhelming, very challenging. And so as we spend some time together and discuss this, the goal of this presentation is to provide skills that can assist those that are in a role of caregiving. By the way, by raise of hands, how many in this room are in a caregiving role right now? So maybe 30%. How many have been in a caregiving role currently or in the past? Yeah, so we're starting to get to the point where it's almost the entirety of the room. That is a role that is irreplaceable. The professional community will never be able to accomplish what is needed. We'll rely upon the professional community. That becomes a very important part. But the professional community will never rival the blessings and the strength that comes from an individual that has a heart to care for another person that stands in need. It's an essential part of what we do. Some of you have heard me address that topic through a book called The Careless Society. I'm just going to quickly review that. Joseph McKnight wrote the book. It's amazing. He just talked about how we went from a producing country where almost everything in the gross national product was by production to a service industry. The entire gross national product, almost in entirety, is tied to service. So in order for a service industry, a financial base that is based on service, you need to have people that need. You need to have people that are sick. That's a little challenging when you think about that because it starts to push the caregiver or the minister to the sidelines. People begin to get worried if a close friend has passed away, for example, or someone within the community that's passed away. Sometimes we shy away from going to lift the person that stands in need because we're afraid that we'll say the wrong thing, that will create greater grief within the individual. The opposite is true. We need everyone. Everyone needs to be engaged in this process of lifting and caring for and recognizing the needs of those that are around us. That's an essential aspect. So within church communities, we want to have people ministering. We want to have people that are aware. When you go back into the scriptures, ministering ties to the Savior and ministering ties to the apostles. Is it possible that we can all be ministers or caregivers in a similar fashion? It's essential that we're in that role. But with that comes some significant challenges. And we're going to watch a little video clip here that highlights some of the challenges that are present associated to taking care of people that struggle to take care of themselves. This is a video titled Lift. Some of you may have seen it. Produced by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a beautiful video. What a wonderful message. Yes. When we are engaged in such a work, it is a challenge that creates mental health challenges for us to try to manage. So as you have been or are currently in a caregiving role, what are some of the mental health challenges that we naturally experience as human beings? Let's just rattle some off. The exhaustion, yes. Resentment. Patience, yeah. Burnout, sadness. Very good. Any others? Guilt. Did I hear guilt? Perfect. Yeah, we definitely struggle with guilt because we witnessed it in the film as he was dealing with this guilt of feeling like this was a burden. You magnify that when it's a loved one. And then compassion, did I hear? Anything else? Any other mental health challenges? Loneliness, yeah, absolutely. Yes, either taking on their anxiety or having anxiety yourself as you try to manage that. Is there hopelessness or a sense of depression? How long did that one go on for? 7 years. Yes, and in that case they kind of had an army, right? And one of the keys to mental health is having support. And so if we're in a caregiving role, it would be helpful to consider, can we engage other people in assisting as we go through the experience? Yeah, so the mental health of the caregiver is a very important part. It is as important as the caregiving that's taking place. One other important piece to consider as we kind of back away from this is to consider Paul's wisdom in 1 Corinthians 12, where he's talking about one body in Christ. Remember those verses where he says, can the head say to the foot, I have no need of thee? The head kind of is in that perspective of I'm the one that's important. The foot, maybe we need you, maybe we don't. But the reality is that all are essential. And at the end of those verses, he says that the lesser part of the body is the greater part. So as you think about this sweet sister and the significant impact, wasn't it beautiful to hear her say, I still have meaning. I still have worth. Think about the number of lives that she changed because of the challenges that she experienced. So this part of the journey, of the experience of life, it is important. Everyone has a critical role in what we experience and how we go through the challenges that we experience. But the mental health aspect of the caregiver is where we're going to spend some time focusing. So I'd like to invite a favorite metaphor. I see so many familiar faces. You can just kind of shut off for a minute because you've heard this metaphor before, but those that haven't, just kind of journey it with me. I'd like to invite you to consider a perfect weather day. What is your perfect weather day? Just kind of think about temperature, what the sky looks like, whether there's a breeze. Consider your perfect weather day, and then tomorrow morning, I checked the forecast for tomorrow morning. It's going to be 24 degrees. Sunday morning, even better, 18 degrees. So when you wake up on Sunday morning, I got a plan for you. If you just will lay there in bed and think hard enough and think long enough, you'll get that perfect weather day, right? Ain't happening. Yeah. So a long time ago, we learned we couldn't change the weather. But I would invite you to consider, can you manage how the weather impacts you? And if you can, how do you do that? You can't change the weather, but can you manage how the weather impacts you? So what do? 18 degrees, and you have to go out. You're going to dress warm. You're going to layer up, right? So that seems obvious. But I had 6 kids that went through teenage years. And every day they would run out to the school bus in their 12 and 13-year age and t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops. They hadn't figured it out. They're all adults now, and they all dress warm. So proud of it. But I stopped fighting it. I've got a couple of my kids here. I stopped fighting it after the first child. It just, go figure it out. Yeah, go figure it out. So we learn how to manage how it impacts us. We gradually get that. The same is true with our emotional well-being. Our emotions, like depression and anxiety, and a variety of other obsessive thinking, whatever it might be, it's going to create emotional challenges, and those emotions are going to come and they're going to go. There's going to be good days and there's going to be more difficult days that come. Learning how to manage its impact, learning skills like the parka or the sunscreen on a beach or an umbrella, learning skills that we can implement can help us manage our emotions, but they will not take emotions away, and emotions, of course, are an essential part of our journey. The emotions are invaluable. And instead of seeing emotions on a good scale or a bad scale, can we begin to see them through a lens of an experience? Being with our emotions, having opportunities to learn from them, and experiencing what we will experience on any given day. That's an interesting thought. So, how often do we experience a challenging emotion that we would categorize as bad and lay in bed metaphorically trying to change it versus trying to apply a skill that can help us manage how it impacts us? Going back to 18 degrees, if we have to be outside and we go out with our t-shirt and flip-flops and shorts, how long are we going to last? But if we go out layered up, we can be in the experience but still be moving towards the things in which we want to accomplish during the day. If we have capacity to manage our emotions versus our emotions managing us, the invitation is that we can be in our day moving towards what we value versus being completely distracted by what we value because of the heaviness of the challenges that we're experiencing. So practicing quality coping skills to deal with the mental health increases our capacity to move towards what we value, to engage in the day. Having a value direction becomes an essential piece of the equation. With that in mind, psychological flexibility becomes an essential tool. So I'm going to be referencing a modality, a therapeutic modality called ACT therapy, ACT therapy. If you're interested in doing some learning on that, the author that I would encourage is Russ Harris. Stephen Hayes is the father of ACT, and he's got great stuff, but Russ Harris has a capacity to teach it. So if you're interested in doing some self-study, just look ACT Russ Harris, and you'll have a plethora of information that you can learn about. So the foundational principle for managing our mental health through this modality is what we call psychological flexibility. The opposite of flexibility is rigidity, right? Rigidity. And someone once said that the definition of insanity is what? Yes, doing that same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Does that sound flexible or does that sound rigid? Yes. Yeah. So it's hard to change. Change as human beings, changing as human beings is one of the sticking points for all of us. It's not easy. But if we can have healthy psychological flexibility, it increases our capacity to find meaning and joy and to move towards the things that we value. Let me invite you to step into a room with white walls, just an office with white walls. So imagine yourself in this office. I've invited you to be there. You're one of my clients, and I've invited you to stay in this room all day long. I'm not going to be there with you. It's on the ground level of the floor of the building. It's got one window in this room. It doesn't open, but it provides some nice light. And your exercise for the day is to stay in that room for the next hours. So I leave the room. There's one chair in the room, and you think, well, if I'm going to be here for 8 hours, then I'm going to go sit on this chair. So you start walking towards the chair, and as you approach it, you recognize that, oh my goodness, it only has 3 legs. What's Rick doing to me? So then you think, well, he won't care. He's a nice guy. I can just swap this chair out. So you go to swap the chair out, and as you approach the door to swap it out, you notice that it's hot. The door is really hot. And the handle is even hotter. And you're like, why isn't the fire alarm going off? What's Rick trying to do to me? At this point, you're getting mad at me, right? But you recognize from your elementary years of school of fire safety that if you open the door, it's going to be a vacuum and it's going to pull the flames in. So you know, I can't open the door. I want to live. What are you going to do? So you're going to use the chair to do what? Break the window. And you rescue yourself. You get out of the building. Perfect. So the chair went from broken to life-saving tool in a matter of seconds. That is psychological flexibility. So when I'm working with members, I say members, clients. I work for the church, for the Jesus Christ, in my role as a counselor. So when I work with clients and I ask them that question about psychological flexibility, I ask them, how flexible are you? Oftentimes they'll say, I'm really flexible. Yeah, and they can give me lots of examples of their flexibility. However, when we start talking about those few sticking points in their lives, those few areas that they've come to see me for, and in reality, any one of us is in need of therapy at some point in our lives. It's a given. So I'm grateful for those that feel the freedom to come. But when I ask them about those sticking points in their lives, all of a sudden the psychological flexibility goes to almost zero, and the rigidity associated to those challenges increases significantly. I just want this out of my life. I want the pornography addiction gone. I want the depression that's overwhelming me out. I have prayed forever to have this challenge removed from me. The rigidity sets in. It's a natural aspect, and all of us are challenged by that. The invitation would be, can we see that challenge like the broken chair? Can we flip the paradigm from it being broken to being a life-saving experience for us? So consider this burly gentleman in the video. This broken situation became the most important thing for his development and his growth. Psychological flexibility is the invitation for our capacity to experience life without life overwhelming us. Now, I state that in a fashion that almost sounds like, well, it's just easy, you just do it. That's the journey of life. That's the hardest aspect of life, is to invite that. So this modality of therapy invites us to consider several principles or coping skills that can help develop and enhance our psychological flexibility. And so we're going to talk about a few of those today as we spend how much time do we have? Spend the last 20 minutes of our time together. So the first one that I'd like to invite is a principle of acceptance. So acceptance is radical acceptance is a core to our mental health. And if we can tie that back, as the golden thread, back to psychological flexibility, it enhances our ability to look at life through a different lens. There was an astronaut that was famous. He'd been to space several times, and so they were making a movie about him. And a famous actor had agreed to play the role. So he says, if I'm going to play the role, then I want to live with this astronaut for a month or so to gain insight into all of these nuances and characteristics so I can do a good job. So he goes and he lives with him, and towards the end of living with him, he says to the astronaut, he said, I just don't get it. I don't get how you could get in that spaceship and basically push the go button, knowing that you might not be coming back to Earth every time you did it. And the astronaut looked at him kind of puzzled, and he says, yeah, you don't get it. He said, I was scared to death every time I got into that spaceship and had to push the go button. But I learned to live with my fear. Instead of trying to push it out and not have it a part of his life, he had flexibly worked to be with the fear, to sit with the fear and not have it interfere with his capacity to move towards the things that he valued. I would imagine exploration was one of his core values. And so he was moving through the experience and having a capacity to find meaning and fulfillment in life. As we increase our psychological flexibility through a principle of acceptance, we actually find a capacity to have more meaning in what we are doing, more fulfillment in the experiences that we go through. One prophet once said, and it must needs be that there is opposition in all things. It's the core to our capacity. But if the anxiety or the depression or whatever it might be is interfering with our capacity to move towards our values, it is managing us instead of us managing it. So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about learning how to live with it and have that view of acceptance, which is really a choice or an opportunity to start to see it a little different, like the chair. Okay, another principle that we use to help our mental health regarding the challenges of life is mindfulness. So mindfulness is nothing more and nothing less than contacting the present moment. And I personally believe that God is He is the center of all truth. Everything that we've found in the mental health world that works is because it has an origin. And the origin is God the Father and the Son Jesus Christ from my personal perspective. So if that is the case, then mindfulness in form, in my view, is trusting God. Having a capacity to trust Him. In Matthew 6, where he talks about the lilies of the field, which is, by the way, my favorite song, in the lilies of the field, he's talking about how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. He talks about the sparrows of the air, how they are fed and taken care of. He says, take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take care of the things of itself. This capacity to live in the present moment becomes a really important part of mental health. So there was a study done where they invited individuals, a pretty large N sample, to download an app on their phone that would chime at different points in the day, 2 or 3 times during the day. And when it chimed, they were asked to do 3 things. Number 1, write down what they were doing at the time. Second thing they were to do is to write down what they were thinking about at that time when the chime went off. And the third was to write down how they were feeling. Interestingly, after they gathered the data, what they found is if the person was thinking about something other than what they were doing, oftentimes their moods were more discouraged or depressed or anxious. If they were thinking about what they were doing at the time of the chime, the moods were more elevated. So practicing a mindfulness approach, practicing our capacity to be in the present moment mentally, makes a big difference. Can we live in the future? We can't do that. Can we live in the past? But can we can we live in the future mentally? And can we live in the past mentally? And you all know this. What's the prominent emotion if we're mentally in the past? Yes. And what's the prominent emotion if we're mentally in the future? Anxiety. So, I don't know about you, but every problem I've had to solve has never been solved in the past. And I haven't had a capacity to solve it in the future either. But we spend so much time. Just take a minute and think about, just ponder in your mind, how much of my day do I spend in the future mentally? How much of my day do I spend thinking about the past? And how much of my day is in the present moment? I do this all the time with the clients I work with. It's usually an average about 20% in the present. That's a lot of time outside of that. Then I ask, what would you like it to be? And they're wise. They're wise enough to recognize I can't do it all the time, but I'd like it to be around 80%. So if we want to practice living in the present, we need to have some exercises to do this. Number one is to notice. Can we notice what we're noticing? Can we just be in a place where we notice where we're at mentally? And after we notice that we're living mentally in the future, worried about something like presenting at a pause conference, man, it was an exercise for me to stay in the present moment as this approached. But can we be in a place where we notice it, and when we notice it, then have an exercise to help draw us back into the present? And usually it's just a really self-compassionate noticing of, oh, I just noticed that I'm thinking about the future. So I'm going to do a little show up for the minute exercise. So for 60 seconds, I'm just going to pause. That was a pitch. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to notice everything I see for 60 seconds. Everything I can hear. Just listen to what you can hear right now. And then go a little deeper. And a little deeper. Can you almost hear your heart beating? Then in those 60 seconds, what do I also taste and smell and touch? When we have capacity to step into the present moment, it's an amazing gift. T.S. Eliot said, each moment is a fresh beginning. We can let go of the past. We can choose to be in the present. Thomas S. Monson said, the present moment is the only place where we really live. It is his gift to us. I love his play on words, the present and gift. He said, the past is behind you, learn from it. The future is ahead of you, prepare for it. The present is now, live in it. Jesus Christ again, take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take care of the things of itself. If we can master mindfulness, having a capacity to be in the present, it invites a value-directed, psychologically flexible capacity to enjoy the things that we are experiencing and to stop judging them as good or bad and start simply experiencing them. Experiencing what we're going through. Now, this is a skill that has to be practiced over and over again. A very similar principle is cognitive diffusion. Having a capacity to diffuse from our thoughts. So the mind is like a stream of consciousness. It's always thinking. It never stops. Even when we're sleeping, it's just go, 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 go. It's always thinking. And if we're not careful, we begin to think that we are our thoughts. So some challenging thoughts that are normal for us as human beings. We do a little OQ survey or questionnaire with every client that walks through our door. It's an outcome questionnaire. And on it, one of the things that asks the individual is whether they believe something is wrong with their mind. And I can't tell you how many state that they think something's wrong with their mind. And one of my roles, I believe, is to help them to see that your mind is normal. Your mind's like everyone else's in the sense of we all think that we're not enough. We all think that we are a loser. We all think that we are not smart enough, that we're not gifted enough, or that we're going to blow it, or we're going to fail, or this thing is not going to work out. It's a very common process for the mind to have these thoughts. Favorite thoughts that we get fused to. And so having a capacity to cognitively diffuse from our thoughts becomes a very healthy process. But if we try to wrestle them out, it's not going to work. Think about the pink elephant. Don't think about the pink elephant. Be sure not to think about the pink tail or the pink trunk, or all of a sudden you just are stuck. That's all you can think about. So, are we our thoughts? We're not our thoughts. Our thoughts are simply thoughts. Can we notice them? Can we be aware of them? And then can we hold them lightly and let them flow through us? That's the practice of cognitive diffusion. So it doesn't typically work very well if you're having a really anxious thought or a really depressed thought in the moment. That's challenging to get into this place of I can hold that lightly and I can have it almost slide through me as if it's sliding down a slippery slide at the park. But if we practice cognitive diffusion on a regular basis, then when we have those more challenging thoughts that want to fuse and get us stuck and start to cause us to move away from what we value versus towards what we value, then we have greater capacity. So if you want to practice this, you would do something like this. When you're driving from your house to Walmart, select a car color, like a blue car color. Don't select something that's really unique. You got to have a common color. And every time you approach a blue car as you're driving, it's going the opposite direction. You're going one way, it's going the other. You place whatever you're thinking about at the time on the hood of that blue car and let it go. Doesn't matter if it's a good thought. It's really nice when it's a nasty thought, something that you're heavily discouraged about. Sometimes you'll find that it's a repeat thought, it'll come back, but that's okay. We're just practicing this idea of cognitive diffusion. So mindfulness, acceptance, cognitive diffusion, all of these things are intended to increase our capacity for psychological flexibility so that we can see life through the lens of life and engage in the challenges in a more meaningful, fulfilling way that allows us to move towards what we value. These principles have brought great peace into my life. There is strength in the midst of storms. We aren't getting rid of storms. We're learning how to live within the storms as we go forward in the process. And so thank you for your time, and have a beautiful day.